You open this door with the key of reason. Beyond it is another dimension, a dimension of truth, a dimension of freedom, a dimension of joy. You're moving into the land of both the ideal and the real, of the possible and the actual. You've just crossed over into the Capitalist Corner.
Where reason meets reality, welcome to the Capitalist Corner.
Welcome to the Capitalist Corner, everybody. I'm your host, Michael Liebowitz. I got a new blue screen behind me, so you may see the blue. Maybe I shouldn't say that on TV. I don't know, or whatever this is. But either way, welcome to the show. I've got a great episode of the Michael Liebowitz Show out right now with Dr. Walter Block discussing the state of the liberty movement. I've been doing several other interviews on the topic that will be released over the next couple weeks. Of course, we've got a lot more going on here. We've got the Saturday show, the Rational Alternative Weekend. We've also got the Sunday members-only stuff. So like, share, and subscribe to the Rational Alternative. And, of course, we have the Capitalist Corner every day. So there was, I've got the topics picked out, but something just occurred, a few minutes ago that happens fairly often, I would say. And that's, in one of the clips I posted, Dr. Walter Block talked about how his transition from being a socialist to being pro-capitalist occurred after a meeting with Ayn Rand. And so somebody posts, oh, well, that's why she died on welfare and in poverty. And people frequently say this. There's only one problem with it, is it's not true. When she died, she was worth between $500,000 and $2 million. Certainly not poverty. She was still getting royalties from her books. So she wasn't poor. Now, she did accept Medicare and Social Security after some arguing with her legal team, because they convinced her she didn't want to take it because of the it was government, but they explained to her, look, you've paid into this your whole life. And what she paid in terms of taxes is far more than what she got out. So that's the truth. But it really isn't the point. The thing that gets me is how many people simply don't know what the hell they're talking about. And people who don't know what the hell they're talking about have no problem voicing their ignorance to the world. I mean, these people, and a lot of them have done it, say it with such cocksuredness. It's as if, they just repeat it to each other, come to believe it, and then that's it, and spread it around. That's not responsible. It's not moral. It's just a lousy thing to do and a lousy way to live. So Katie wants to know, where's Mark? Evidently, I'm not enough. Mark is elsewhere. Mark has gone to the famous place known as elsewhere. Katie, I hope that I am enough for the audience without Mark here. So, yeah, I just think it's very important. If you're going to discuss topics, whatever the topic may be, you ought to at least know the facts. Now, once you give your evaluation, okay, that's different, but at least know the basic facts upon which you're relying in the things that you are stating. So anyways, we got some good topics here today. The antitrust stuff. So there are currently, let me make sure that I get this right here. I'm at the wrong place altogether. There are 12 states right now that are challenging Paramount's takeover of Warner. They say the merger is going to extinguish competition. So little something about the antitrust laws. If you have Capitalism, the Unknown Ideal, there's a great article on antitrust by Alan Greenspan where he talks about how they're completely arbitrary. You can't know what they are going in, which makes them very difficult to comply with, if not impossible. So the antitrust, they're designed to promote free and open competition. So how you're going to have free competition with the government precluding certain types of non-rights violating behavior is beyond me, but nevertheless. So the first antitrust law was the Sherman Act, 1890. It's called here the bedrock. It outlaws all contracts, combinations, and conspiracies that unreasonably restrain trade or monopolization or attempts to monopolize. Then the Clayton Act comes along, 1914. It targets specific anti-competitive practices before they become full-blown monopolies. It regulates corporate mergers and acquisitions, prohibits practices like price discrimination, which means charging different prices in different places. And the Federal Trade Commission Act, this is what created the Federal Trade Commission to serve as the regulatory agency that oversees this stuff. The violations are price fixing, monopolization, collusion and cartels, and anti-competitive mergers. So one of the things is that they argue that, for instance, that companies will get together, and when they do, they can charge a monopoly price. And what they'll do, what a monopoly will do is artificially lower the price below market rates, below cost even, in order to push others out. And when that happens, they then raise their prices higher than they otherwise would have been because now there's a lack of competition. The problem with that theory is that you'd be hard-pressed to find examples of this in history where this has actually occurred. Economic historians have looked into it. I mean, what is it? Rockefeller's Standard Oil has been accused of it, but it hasn't happened. I mean, I asked this morning, I asked Grok to give me historical examples where this has occurred. So this is what Grok actually said. Predatory pricing, temporarily selling below cost or below competitive market levels to eliminate rivals, followed by price increases once dominance is achieved, is a classic antitrust concern, but rigorous economic analyses often find it rare or unsuccessful in practice. True predatory pricing requires not just aggressive low prices, but also the ability to recoup losses through sustained higher prices afterwards, which new entrants or remaining rivals often undermine. Many historical accusations, e.g. against Standard Oil, have been debunked or heavily qualified upon closer examination of records, as prices frequently continued falling due to efficiencies in entries. The only place that they say that this is a clear-cut instance of it happening, and I can't vouch for it because I don't really know the history, but it says that the American Sugar Refining Company was able to it was partially successful in doing this. Yes, Jim, Standard Oil kept reducing prices. So, in other words, it's a fiction. The idea that there's these monopolies that occur in free markets that are then hurting consumers, it's fiction. Now, this is why, of course, nowadays, with the lean econs of the world, they want to change it. It's not about consumer harm anymore. If you're out competing your rivals, that evidently is a problem. And these laws are prone to corruption where, people are criticizing Trump because he greenlights acquisitions or mergers of people or companies that have supported him. But this is nothing new. And that's the thing is once you give people power, especially when it's arbitrary, you're creating conditions for abuse, and that's what you get. The thing to do here would be to ban antitrust laws, abolish them, and allow the free market to reign. Businesses simply cannot function properly in an environment where if they outcompete their competitors, they could be accused of, predatory pricing or whatever, whatever else unfair competitive practices, that sort of thing. And Jim Valiant's right. It's a source of censorship and other intimidation. So the thing to do is to get rid of these. This is just another example of government overreach, of government trying to control the economy. Reason Magazine, actually, I think it was in Reason Magazine. Anyway, let me make sure that I know what I'm talking about here. Yes, 12 states sue, call Paramount-Warner Brothers merger an antitrust violation. It says here 12 state attorneys general filed a lawsuit Monday challenging Paramount Skydance $110 billion acquisition of Warner Brothers Discovery, arguing that the combined Hollywood giant would damage economic competition in the entertainment and media worlds. I mean, there's people that have actually said that. I don't know where the quote is. It doesn't really matter, but basically that the movies are not just commodities. Movies are actually, they're shape culture. They educate. They provide us with information, and that's why this is so bad. Movie companies do not have any kind of duty, obligation, or anything to produce any movies at all, let alone the kind that this politician wants them to produce, right? I mean, that is like one of the more ridiculous objections to it. And we as consumers have no right to quality programming. It's that simple. Not to mention the fact that measuring competition or how many competitors need to be in a field is impossible to do. So who competes with movie companies? I mean, is Netflix competing with movie theaters? What about YouTube? What about private movie makers or private people who produce reels on TikTok and things of that nature? I mean, you can't measure the competition. You can't decide what the appropriate amount is, what the appropriate amount of firms, what's the appropriate quality, what's the appropriate price. All you do is empower government to further restrict the rights of the American people. And yes, movie producers, movie companies are people. And if they're American, they are the American people. So this is absolutely insane in my view that they're suing, but we need to just get rid of these antitrust laws and stop dicking around. Now, I don't think that's likely to happen, but we can hope, and we could. Jim says we need more jazz soloists. Perhaps, Jim, but I would suggest to Jim that what we need is more constitutional originalists. That would be better than having more jazz soloists. Jim's mistaken view on the subject notwithstanding. Yes, Jim, you can, of course, comment, but I have the microphone, the bully pulpit. And by the way, when people watch this in reruns, they're not going to see your comments and your arguments against me. They're only going to see me making my wonderful points, as I always do. So in addition to these 12 states that are suing Paramount, we also have this situation where, oh, God, they're subpoenaing. Okay, so evidently there was a leak about the dangers of this new Air Force One that Trump was given. It doesn't have anti-missile technology. And this was leaked to the press, and the press reported on it. So the Trump folks are subpoenaing 5 journalists. I guess they've already subpoenaed 3 of them to try to get them to name the source. This is nothing new. Obama did it, of course. And, it's been done before that as well, most recently under Obama, where they want to compel journalists to give up their sources. And there's arguments that, technically it's not really freedom of speech to not name your sources, because anybody can be compelled to testify in a criminal case, and the reporter shouldn't be any different. And, so there's arguments that it's not actually a violation of the First Amendment. There are, however, what they call shield laws. Let me just bring it up. I forget where I got this. A free speech organization put this out. There are bright spots and black holes when it comes to freedom of the press. Examples in the U.S. One bright spot is the ongoing effort to pass a federal shield law, which would protect journalists from being compelled to reveal their confidential sources. This is rare, but it comes up in cases involving leaks to news media, particularly involving national security issues. There are states that have such laws, but there's no federal laws. Now, I personally, I don't know, despite being an originalist, I don't know if it would have satisfied constitutional scrutiny to say that journalists don't have to reveal their sources. But as a philosophical matter, I don't think that journalists should be compelled to reveal their sources. I mean, that obviously has a cooling effect. People aren't going to tell the press things, and that leaves us, we, the people, less informed about what's going on in the world. I don't like the idea of having government threats issued toward media companies, media personnel, telling them that if you don't reveal your sources, you're going to be jailed, or any other threats that they may put out there. If I had Jim Valiant here, which I don't, I would have him get into more of the First Amendment applications here. But again, the First Amendment aside, I think it's bad policy. I think that it's threatening to freedom of speech, threatening to freedom of the press. And, Thomas Jefferson said he'd rather have newspapers than government. If given the choice to have government without newspapers or newspapers without government, he would pick newspapers without government. And there's a reason, because we need to be informed. If we're to make good decisions, we need to be informed. If the government is doing sneaky shit and you have somebody within the government that reveals it, that seems to be in our interest as the American people. And I just think our interest ought to trump, no pun intended, their interest in keeping secrets like this. I mean, so many people criticized this idea that the Qataris were gifting this plane, right? This aircraft. And it turns out there are legitimate security concerns here for the President of the United States. And I think that given that we've elected the President of the United States, not me personally, but, the people that actually voted, they have a say in this and they are affected by it. If the president's judgment is such that he accepts a gift from Qataris that is unsafe for him to carry out, renders it more unsafe for him to carry out his duties, then the people of this country ought to know about it if somebody working for him is going to leak it. I just think that I hope that the reporters win this case, and if they don't, I hope they have the courage to suffer the consequences, because I don't think it's a good idea at all to have the government telling them that they have to reveal their sources. I mean, what would you do if you were a whistleblower and you told somebody something in confidence, and then you knew that it could, that person could be compelled to tell you? You just don't tell them, right? You just say, okay, I'll keep it to myself and let the consequences be what they are. Let the American people get shafted. Let us remain uninformed. And that would be that. And again, that's just not a good idea. What else do we have going on here in the world? So there's a study was evidently done in a drug warrior is really leaning into it as evidence for that, against the idea that decriminalization is a good thing or drug legalization is a good thing. In this study, I guess, referenced Oregon and Washington State, not D.C. There's an article in Reason Magazine that says the guy's just misreading the studies. For one thing, decriminalization is not the same thing as legalization. And you have to keep that in mind when having this discussion, because it's still illegal to go and purchase narcotics. It's still illegal to sell narcotics, which means you're still getting your narcotics from black markets. And guess what? When you go and buy your drugs from black markets, you're buying products that are cut, they're impure. You have no way of knowing the potency of these products. And when you have a situation, they call it the iron law of prohibition. When you outlaw drugs, you're going to end up with the most potent condensed form. And fentanyl, far more powerful than heroin, it ends up being easier to smuggle than heroin. So it ends up making its way into your heroin. So you're going to end up with overdoses. So there was a rise in overdoses that occurred in Washington and in Oregon. And the guy says, look, this is evidence that drug legalization doesn't work. He neglects the fact that this was during COVID. He neglects the fact that drug overdoses were rising in other places as well. But he wants to focus on the fact that the overdoses increased in these areas. Look, you want... If you want to have a more just society, you want to legalize drugs. One of the things that the drug warrior neglects to talk about is all the people that are harmed from drug prohibition, not just in terms of the overdoses, but in terms of getting arrested, going to prison, people being wrongfully stopped, wrongfully searched, and subject to wrongful search and seizure. There's an abundance of problems on the other side of the ledger that he completely ignores about the costs of the war on drugs, and only wants to look at what he perceives to be the costs of legalization. But that's not the way that you would go about assessing this. Not at all. And again, if you legalize drugs, then I'm going to go and I'll buy it like I buy liquor, and I'll find out, okay, this is the potency of whatever drug that I want to buy. And so I know what to consume. I know my tolerance, and I'm less subject to death because I'm less subject to high amounts or, high potency that I wouldn't know about. The other thing is, presenting users as the victims of drug legalization. Like to say, well, there's more overdoses. Well, it's their lives, right? It's not your life. It's not just for you to use the force of the government to prevent this person from taking a dangerous substance. It's only the inherent collectivism involved that allows that to happen. It allows the nanny state to predominate and say, well, these people are dying and they need to be protected from themselves. No, they need to be protected from you. And they need to be protected from government goons who think it's okay to use force to stop people from engaging in activity that those people freely engage in and consensually. Again, I mean... I don't know how it's not common sense that if you end up with a legal product, you're going to end up with a cheaper product. You're going to end up with a safer product. People will be making more informed choices. When the price of it goes down, you're going to be eliminating your corner drug dealers. You'll make a big dent, obviously, in gang wars, things of that nature. Also, when the price of drugs drops, less people are going to be committing crimes in order to support their habit because it'll be more affordable, much like alcohol today. You'd have what we would call functioning heroin addicts, much like we have functioning alcoholics. And also, not everybody who uses the drug becomes addicted. So, I mean, it's such a no-brainer to me to legalize all drugs, but I'm not the guy that gets to make these decisions. One guy that does get to make decisions, however, is the President of the United States, Donald Trump, who is allowing, I guess now, for more nuclear reactors to be built. A lot of the hostility toward nuclear power stems from the 3 Mile Island meltdown, but nobody died from that. Nobody. So, I mean, I don't know how much harm it actually did. What about all the harm that's caused by not having nuclear power? Yeah, it seems to me that we really need to have this. Now, people refer to Fukushima, But I've got some information here about that. According to John Stossel, let me just see if I can't find it. 18 reactors have had operating license extended, and many new reactors are in development. That is a good thing. Let me find it here. I've got to find the Fukushima stuff, folks. Very, very important. A beach in Brazil, it says here, actually has natural radiation levels much higher than our government safety standards. People with France, they have plenty of nuclear reactors. Okay, so in Japan, according to this article in Reason Magazine, not one person actually died from the radiation. People died because the government's required evacuation disrupted their medical care. So people are dying because of government policy, according to this article, not because of the radiation. Let's see here. As easily as Trump can giveth, Trump can take it away. Let's see how long Trump's nuclear deal lasts. I don't know how long it will last. But I'll tell you this, I would rather have nuclear power than not have it. I don't like the idea of the president being able to agree or disagree, and that's how you end up with these. But, if it's unconstitutional for him to do it, I would oppose it, like I oppose the war. I don't know that it is unconstitutional given the law. That'd be, something maybe Jim could talk about. But all things remaining equal, I would like to see an increase in nuclear power. I don't think it represents the danger that people seem to think it represents. And not only that, I think it's a great, great benefit. Here in Connecticut, I'm listening to the radio yesterday, and our governor, Lamont, was talking about how we need more wind and more solar. And he's talking about how cheap we're going to drive down the price of electricity. And I haven't seen any evidence for that. And I'm not opposed to wind, and I'm not opposed to solar. I'm for whatever the hell people want to do that's not violating people's rights. And if they want wind, then they should have wind power. If they want solar, put the panels on your house. I mean, that seems like a simple enough, what's the word I'm looking for? Simple enough proposition to me. Any questions, by the way, from the audience? And remember, too, super chats, super stickers. Very, very greatly appreciated. And anybody that is joining us currently from X, you are watching the Capitalist Corner. The Capitalist Corner is a daily show that discusses current events from a pro-freedom, pro-capitalist perspective. Normally, it's hosted by Mark Pellegrino and myself. Mark is not here today. I expect him back tomorrow. But the show, The Capitalist Corner, is just one show that we have here on the Rational Alternative channel. This is one of our two live shows. This one's daily. We also have the Rational Alternative Weekend, noon Eastern Time, Saturdays, with myself and Dr. Megan Ribbons. And we also have interviews, the Michael Liebowitz Show, where I interview people from numerous disciplines on numerous topics. I also do debates, and so you'll be able to see those as well. But for right now, the super chats and super stickers would be greatly appreciated. Ray says there are some companies that have been developing micro reactors for industrial plants in small neighborhoods. I've been pretty excited about that. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea to me. The more the merrier. Kara Felix feels that Jim has left. What do we have up here? We have a debate with Mr. Deagle. Mr. Deagle says he recently had a debate with a guy on X on the issue of prohibition. His argument was that prohibition actually works and that legal drugs have higher potency, which makes them more dangerous. When I told him that he doesn't have a right to prohibit anybody from using drugs, he called me a middle schooler. It felt good because he was very pretentious, but had no answer when I dismantled his argument. Yeah, and he's also wrong on the facts. His argument's terrible. When people say that, oh, grow up. Just make an argument, right? Don't tell me to grow up. If you think you can win, if you think you've got the better argument, if you've got the facts, tell me. Help me out, brother or sister. Educate me. But don't just think you're going to win an argument by saying something like, "Oh, grow up," or what did this guy tell him? I think he called him a middle schooler or whatever. So yeah, that's garbage, complete garbage. So tonight, 9 p.m. Eastern Time, Donald Trump is set to give a speech, and it's, I guess, about elections. And there's concern, I guess, that he's going to be touting his nonsense about how the election was stolen from him and yada, yada, yada. And then the networks, I guess, don't want to, oh, God, give a platform to that. But they're also afraid to not play it because of his tendency for lawsuits, bully pulpit, that sort of thing, revoking license, whatever, licenses. So they don't quite know what they're going to do tonight. I did not see JD Vance on Rogan. It's funny. I don't really care for the Joe Rogan experience. I've listened to it. Seems like a nice guy. He's certainly a good conversationalist. But as far as giving me information, I don't find him to be very good. Now, granted, I'm not a fan. I haven't listened to hundreds of episodes. I've listened to maybe, 15, if that, 10 maybe. I don't know. But I've heard him say things that I knew he was wildly wrong about. I've heard him say things that I was able to immediately fact check that were wrong. And I've seen that he has people on his show and he allows them to spout nonsense. And the fact that he supported Bernie Sanders, then Trump, now regrets supporting Trump, he just doesn't seem like he really knows much. So, Akira Felix says, but we've even seen objectivists debating a topic while also refusing to debate said topic when they know they can be crushed on by the facts. So a guy that supports prohibition is obviously a moron. Meathead hippie, that about sums up Rogan, according to Ray. So yeah, I didn't catch JD Vance. I did see a few of the things that he said, but I'm not really too interested. I am probably going to watch Trump tonight because I kind of have to stay informed so that I can talk about it tomorrow. But this guy just getting up and lying outlandishly, I mean, just making stuff up whole cloth and repeating it with absolute vehemence why his trained SEALs clap their flippers together, it's not something that really appeals to me. Yeah, Mr. Deagle says Vance believes the only way to stop communism is to establish it ourselves. Sure, there seems to be a lot of people that believe that way. What and I'll say this, I've said it before, what I hate is that they act like they're not doing that. Trump is a capitalist. You need to have price, you need to stop price gouging, and you got to have Social Security, and you got to have Medicare, of course. Yes, Trump is a capitalist. Well, you're not a capitalist if those are the things that you want. Everybody on board? Mr. Deagle says a little hyperbolic, but basically true. I've gone through the news stories. Of course, there's always the Iran stuff in the news that I'm so bored with. So bored with. I mean, this Trump, and he's going to obliterate him. He's going to take him out. One of the things I guess J.D. Vance said on Rogan is that we're not going to be sending 250,000 troops into Iran to get regime change. He says that that's up to the Iranian people to get regime change. I just don't like. What is the point here? Is Iran a threat to us that we need to eliminate, or Iran? Or are we in this to help the Iranian people? Is that the goal? Is it both? I just don't grasp what exactly it is. They've come out with so many different goals. We've defeated them 15 times. We've completely wiped out their military. It seems every other day that's completely destroyed and then destroyed again. So, it's bad. And Trump with his dumbass threats and his wanting to make a deal. I'm so over it. I want it to go away. And I don't know, the people that were vehement that this war was a good thing, I don't know how they can continue to talk about it without saying, you know what, I got this wrong. At least I've got this wrong. I don't get it. And there's been a transition among some people who went from supporting it to criticizing it without ever recognizing the connection that they supported something that led to something bad. Now, of course, they turn around and say, yeah, but I didn't support it going this way. I supported it doing something that I had in my head. But they were never going to implement what you had in your head. It was always going to go badly because you have a megalomaniacal moron at the helm who's violating the Constitution to do it, and he's doing it without public support. So the idea that you were going to have your fantasy played out in reality was never, ever, ever going to happen. And that fact alone, that you thought it would, ought to cause you to be a little bit humble and just say, you know what, I got this one wrong. I was wrong. But no, that doesn't happen. Not that I've seen. I mean, I'm not, out there all over, trying to find out what everybody's saying on it. But from what I've seen, there hasn't been an abundance of that. An abundance of people saying, damn, I fucked this one up. I got this one wrong. I was thinking this morning about, this show, other shows that I do, and people out there who have criticized me. And I will just say this, that I will put my track record up against virtually anybody. When it comes to issues of fact, credibility regarding facts, I will put my record up against virtually anyone. Now, when it comes to making arguments, that's obviously subject to interpretation, and there's no real way to check it. But on facts, you're not going to find somebody that's better than this show. You're just not. We come correct every morning. I do an abundance of research for the day's topics. And I do my very best to bring you guys a quality program. I give my viewpoints, of course, but it's always based on the facts of the matter. Oh, Mr. Deagle says, I was pro-war at the beginning because I hadn't really considered that Trump is actually the president. I knew that America can crush Iran, and I thought that it was going to. That was obviously a mistake. Well, that's all, Mr. Deagle. And the thing is, we all make mistakes. I mean, we all make errors of judgment at times, especially when it comes to predictions of what's going to occur. There's no shame in that. I do think that there's some shame in not admitting it. And not saying, yeah, damn, you know what? I was wrong. Especially, look, if you were calling Trump Hitler or comparing him to Hitler and comparing ICE to the Gestapo, and then the next thing you did was to say you supported this war and it didn't matter if it was unconstitutional. And then the week after that, or, a couple months later, you're criticizing the way Trump executes this war. And, oh, by the way, you're also touting the United States Constitution in other areas. I got to question your character at that point. I mean, seriously, I can't, there's nothing really more to say there. I mean, I don't know how you don't. Mr. Deagle says it was unimaginable that America was actually going to capitulate to Iran. Well, that's the thing. See, okay. I don't really know, Mr. Deagle, if that is the way to look at it. And let me explain to you what I mean. Given that Trump is who he is, it was predictable that he would mismanage this, that it was going to go wrong, that he didn't have this, the stayability to do what people wanted him to do. That's the first thing. Second thing, we also know that there's unintended consequences to war, that you don't know how other people are going to react. You don't know. So those two things told me from the beginning, this is going to go badly. Now, I could not predict which way it would go badly. I have no idea how it would go badly or what would be the results. I knew it would go badly. And it has, and this is the way that it went badly, is that Trump keeps threatening them and not following through and ends up looking ridiculous. Gas prices are rising because he didn't consider the Straits of Hormuz as a problem. So, we're alienating allies. but those specifics are not something that I would have said, this is exactly what's going to happen. All I knew was that you're violating the Constitution, you don't have public support, and the guy is not bright. And he's also very impulse driven and is surrounded by sycophants. So it was pretty clear that yes, Ray says that saying that people who have problems with this version of the Iran war are somehow pro-Islamic regime, that's a step too far. Yeah, it was. It was, because that's a habit that people have. If you say, yeah, this probably isn't good, are you defending Iran? And for people who call themselves objectivists to do that, I find utterly disgusting. I really do, because that's a tactic that's should be beneath people who are ascribing to a philosophy of reason and of individualism, right? To sit around and say, oh, this person supports evil. And then that thing where, oh, you're being dishonest because you disagree with me. Like, it's all just so goddamn stupid. It's, and whatever. I don't know. I don't know what else to say about that. Any questions, audience? Any questions from you? I'm happy to answer them, whatever they may be. I'm out of topic. See, this is what happens when I'm here alone, because I don't, I can only say so much on a given topic. And, if you've got somebody else here, then that person can give you feedback. Maybe you argue, maybe you banter, whatever, but it extends the show. But when it's me all by my lonesome, I think I still put on a quality program. It's just, first of all, it's difficult for me to gauge how much time I'm going to be able to discuss the topics for. And so we have that, but I'm certainly willing to stick around, folks. Just bring your questions. Ask them. Ask me anything. Let's talk about whatever you want, except for the World Cup, because I'm really kind of sick of the World Cup. I don't like soccer. I think it's a boring, dumb sport. And, Mark said he wanted to send him new versions of the Debt Action Plan. Certainly. I'll check it out, Race. You can send it to me. Is corporatism as bad, better, or worse than welfare for the poor? What exactly do you mean by corporatism? Do you mean corporate welfare? Rock, I need to know what exactly you mean before I answer the question. Let me look it up and maybe I'll get an idea. It says where society is corporate favoritism. No, I don't know what's bad or worse. I think it's all bad. And I'll tell you why. And I don't like to say, well, this is better than that. Because the issue here is you've given the government the authority to pick winners and losers and to benefit whom they choose. That's the issue. And once you've granted the government that authority, it's like when I was just talking about going to war, is you don't know how this thing is going to turn out. You don't know the end results. And it's the same thing. When the government has that power, it's going to go beyond what you want it for. What you want it to be used for. Now, I don't want it to be used for anything, but I'm talking about the people voting. It's similar. I did an interview this morning, and we were talking about Keynes, John Maynard Keynes, and the guy was talking about how the government running deficits the way it does is partially attributed to Keynes. And I said to him, well, the problem is Keynes didn't advocate for constant deficits. But I asked, are you saying that, basically that once you start that, you don't have control of how it turns out? And he said, yeah. So Subby asked me how the lighting is. Yeah, it's good because I have the thing behind me, Sub. But I have to get the stand. I could probably hang this thing from the fan though, Sub. Maybe you'll look at that later on. That might they have a little tab that would help do it. So now somebody says, where'd it go? Creating more productivity. he says, I don't like that it gets labeled capitalism, but he finds it ends up creating more productivity. It may. The problem with it is you can't just look at one consequence, because what it also creates is a lot of resentment and a lot of anger. Because if you are saying, yes, you can't give Joey and Chrissy, who, they just both lost their jobs and they have a baby to feed, but the government shouldn't be helping them, but it's okay to give that money to Elon Musk because he's going to produce. First of all, it's hypocrisy, and it's really a bad look and a way to breed resentment. I do not think that it's a good idea at all. I just think that we ought to oppose it all and not to start guessing which way of government handouts is the better way to go. Now, if you were to say to me, put it a little differently, let's say, look, we're going to start where we are now. How can we move more towards freedom? Well, then I would maybe accept certain policies that I wouldn't accept in an ideal situation, because it's going more toward freedom. So I would like to see them get rid of the income tax altogether. But I would certainly favor any income tax cut that was accompanied by comparable spending or commensurable spending as well. The thing is, if you cut taxes but you don't cut spending, you're going to end up with either inflation or just raising taxes in the end anyway. Mr. Deagle wants to know if opportunity cost is a legitimate concept. Oh boy. Yes, I think so, because I know that to which it's referring. Now, people say this, I find, gets into objectivism because of the economist George Reisman, who argued there's no such thing as opportunity cost because it's something that doesn't actually exist. It's not in existence, so it's not real. And there's a point to that. But what opportunity cost? Yeah, I know who's saying it's not. I like that guy a little bit, that you're talking about, but I find that when he writes on economics, he's not very good. That's my personal opinion. I don't want to beat up on the guy. He's a nice enough guy, but I don't know. But opportunity cost says this. So I'm here right now doing this program. And I'm doing it at the expense of everything else I could have been doing. I could have been scrubbing the floors. I could have been bathing the dogs. I could have walked to the store. I could have been writing. I could have been working on tech stuff. I could have been posting videos. And so I choose this to do. But it's at the cost of all the other opportunities that I had. So the argument is that what I'm doing is, to me, worth the opportunities that I'm giving up. So in terms of a price, is if I'm going to go work for $35, let's say, what the cost, the price that I'm going to charge for what I'm doing here is going to have to be higher than what I've given up. Now, it's not just going to be in money. It's, people value different things differently. But that's the gist of opportunity cost, is that when you do something, it's at the expense of everything else you could be doing. Now, Reisman's argument, and I haven't read this book in almost 20 years, so forgive me if I get it slightly wrong, but the gist of it is, what you didn't do never existed, therefore it can't be a cost. It's more of a psychological concept that allows you to compute what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're giving up. So yes, I think it's legitimate in that sense. Yes, you could have had something different. Thank you, Gary Menard, for the super sticker. The concept of opportunity cost, if I'm not mistaken, was created by Friedrich Wieser of the Austrian school. Let me look it up here and see what it says. But I'm pretty sure it was created by Friedrich Wieser, and I'm pretty sure I described it correctly, but I'm going to get it exactly. Opportunity cost is the value of the next best alternative you give up when making a choice. Because time, money, and resources are limiting, choosing one option means you must forgo the benefits of the other. It is the true hidden price of any decision. Let me see. Who came up with the idea? But yes, I think it's a legitimate concept. I think what occurs, it's not answering that, and I don't want to spend all day looking at my phone. I think that people want to impose what they consider to be an objectivist framework on other disciplines, right? And as Ayn Rand said, or Leonard Peikoff says in Objectivism, the Philosophy of Ayn Rand, you have to, the method you use needs to be appropriate to what you're studying, right? So I wouldn't use introspection, for instance, when studying how flowers grow. Let's just say that. And I wouldn't use empirical or, observation of external reality to understand my own thought process. I would use introspection, right? So when you're talking about economics, let's just say, I absolutely think that there's objective values in that there are things that are better for you. There's things that are worse for you. There's things that are good for you. There's things that are bad for you. I also think that plays very little in the prices that arrive on a market. The prices that arrive on a market are based on the subjective preferences of the people in the economy, and there's no way around it. Right? The price of heroin goes up or down based on whether people want it. It doesn't go up or down based on its objective value. And the same applies to any economic good out there. And so in relation to, so George Reisman wanted to basically rehabilitate the classical school of economics, the cost of production theory of value, to put it on a more solid objective footing, it seems. And I think he was mistaken on that. And when it came to opportunity cost, again, Ayn Rand talked about how there's no such thing as non-existence, which she's correct. So I'll answer that in a second, Jerry. So when you're talking about something like opportunity cost, he looks and he says, okay, this never existed. There's no such thing as something that doesn't exist. So therefore opportunity cost is flawed. And that's an oversimplified statement of his argument. But if you look into it, you'll find that in essence, I'm correct. So at least I think I am, based on 20 years ago of reading it. But the problem is it's absolutely true that what I do comes at the cost of what I'm not doing. And I find it to be incredibly helpful in my own personal decision making. Let's see, what exactly do I have against the fair tax? I'm not sure what exactly is the fair tax. I'm ultimately opposed to all taxation. Because it involves the initiation of force by government against people to take their property, in this case, their money. If you're asking me, would I support something that moves us closer to liberty as a means? Okay, it's a consumption tax is what you're talking about. Okay. Yeah, if you were to say thank you for the $2, Jerry. If you were going to say we're going to implement a national consumption tax as an improvement over what we're doing now, for one thing, a consumption tax doesn't involve the government having your personal data because they don't have to know how much you're making in order for you to pay it. I think it could be lower than what we're actually being taxed for now, and maybe it's going to be a step toward liberty. I could accept it. Accepting that a fair tax or a consumption tax or any kind of tax is just, no, that I won't do, because it's the initiation of force and there's no way around it. So I hope that answers your question, Jerry. Thank you for the $2. Let's see if there's any other questions before I go. Any comments on Todd Blanche? These guys are Trump sycophants. I haven't studied Todd Blanche an awful lot. I believe he was Trump's personal attorney, which makes it a little weird that he would be the attorney general. I think he'll probably be Trump's toady, which is what Trump is looking for, which I don't think is a good idea. I personally wouldn't vote for him, but I don't think that any laws are being broken. The fact that the nominees won't say that Joe Biden won the 2020 election, which under a lot of circumstances I would be, these are like gotcha questions. But I think these questions are relevant now because the question when you ask somebody that, was the election stolen? It tells you the degree to which they're going to cater to Trump's delusions, right? And if somebody says, I'm not answering that, there's a pretty good chance that they're going to cater to him, and that is not a good thing. I agree, Ian Gilmore, that should be disqualifying, but legally I don't think it is. And I agree with you, Ian, that's a valid gotcha question. All right, so nobody answered my question yesterday. The Blumenthal session I referenced above. I did not see it. I'm not a fan of Dick Blumenthal. He's my senator. Let me see if I can't find it, what you said. Senator Blumenthal recently questioned a former ICE lawyer about an official memo from acting ICE director explicitly stating that ICE officers should violate the Fourth Amendment. Doesn't something systemic and blatantly unconstitutional from top down make ICE illegitimate? I think that ICE is unconstitutional. So if that's what you're asking me about their being illegitimate, I would say yes. They're an unconstitutional organization, and I would get rid of them. I think that federal immigration laws are illegitimate, and we should get rid of them. Nevertheless, ICE is a law enforcement agency, and so I mean, and a lot of the things that have been claimed, I found weren't necessarily true about ICE, but I do think it's an unconstitutional agency, and as such, I'd like to see it abolished. So if that's what you mean. Hold on. I'm trying to. Okay. So if that's what you mean, then yes, I'd say they're illegitimate, but so are a lot of other things. And I wouldn't, by the way, just hinge their illegitimacy on current actions or what they've done lately. I would take it straight to the constitutional point. It's an unconstitutional organization. Because if you're talking about what you are, then you can reform it and make it okay. But I don't think that you can reform it and make it okay because I think it's unconstitutional. I asked yesterday what I could do for fun in Pittsburgh. Yeah, Gary, I don't know, though, if they're acting further unconstitutionally. It's like my opposition to the war in Iran. Let me give an analogy. I opposed the war from the start because it was unconstitutional. I also thought that it would go very badly. Suppose, though, that it went exactly how the supporters of the war wanted to go, that the Ayatollahs were thrown out, the Iranian people rose up, and they established a constitutional republic over there. Let's just say it went as well as can be expected. I would still say it's not a good thing because it's the president of the United States violating our fundamental law. And I think that matters. And I think once you start getting into too much of the consequences, not that it's not okay to point out the consequences you're pointing out. I think that's okay to do, but I wouldn't make that argument specifically because I think the fundamental is far more important. I wouldn't want to get bogged down in the concrete consequences as opposed to the principles involved. So I hope that makes sense, Gary, but thank you. Okay, what can be the capitalist thought of the day? And then the question. Wow, what can I ask? Capitalist thought of the day. I'm going to go back to what we talked about earlier about antitrust laws. And I'm going to tie that in with the idea of a fair tax, or is corporatism better than welfareism? And I'm going to tie it to Gary Menard's question just now. Fundamentally, antitrust laws involve the government using to control businesses who are not violating anybody's rights. So the government is initiating force against antitrust, against companies claiming they're violating antitrust laws. In the case of a fair tax, the government is initiating force in order to compel people to pay taxes. In corporatism versus welfareism, the government is initiating force, and they're doing it to pick winners and losers. The principle involved here is that government ought not to be initiating force. In the case that Gary Menard talked about, yes, ICE is behaving badly. Yes, they're being destructive. Yes, that's worth pointing out. But fundamentally, I believe they are unconstitutional, and that should nip it in the bud, regardless of what they do or don't do. Of course, what I'm talking about here is the importance of principles. And if we are going to be advocating for capitalism, we need to do so in principle. We need to recognize that initiating force is wrong, that governments ought not to be doing it, that the only purpose of government is to protect individual rights, and that in order to have a rights-protecting government, we must have laws that we know ahead of time so people know how to conduct themselves. In other words, we need to have something akin to the Constitution, and what we have is a pretty damn good Constitution. So again, we need to be advocating based on principle. Okay, my question, what the hell can be my question? My question is this: do you think soccer is boring? Why or why not? Do you think soccer is boring? Why or why not? Please go to YouTube, the Rational Alternative YouTube channel, and answer the question. Helps with the algorithm. Again, people joining us from X, this has been the Capitalist Corner. It's our flagship show. It airs every day, 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific, every day during the week, I should say. Then on Saturdays, we also have the Rational Alternative Weekend, and if you become a member, we've got a lot of membership-only content. So please check us out at the Rational Alternative YouTube channel. And I'm hoping Mark will be back tomorrow. Until then, please check your premises.